Any questions at this point?
Yeah.
You again.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this because I don't understand it, and I've been trying to.
Okay.
The cost of acquisition, you said it's an ad. It doesn't include the cost of time of paying someone to keep up the Facebook page.
That's blogging. Their number, they include everything, and we're going to step into that. We're going to step into that.
Okay, good. Okay.
So, okay, everybody cool? Any signs of life out there? Any, movement, breathing? Okay.
Is it the value per user or the total value?
This is value per fan.
Per fan, right?
Per fan.
That's added spend per fan per year, right? It's additional
yeah,
beyond.
Yeah,
beyond
it's an
fans.
annual.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an annual. Okay. Now we're going to get into ROI, and I'm going to go very slowly here. If you guys are familiar with this, I'm sorry, but we've gotten so much interest in how to calculate an ROI. I have a simple explanation. A simple calculation, but I got into the definition pretty heavily. So when we get to this, I'm expecting you to interrupt. Please interrupt me, because this is the part where we really want to spend the time, and I want to get the concept across. ROI is literally ROI, return on investment. So if we're looking at investment, investment is anything, resources, time, or money that's spent on a campaign. We're going to go to a slide and go into the detail on that. But the idea is that if it costs, it's part of the calculation. Now, I'm sure, with the exception of maybe a few of you, you don't do the accounting for your company. If you do have a larger company, you probably have an accountant that may be able to help you calculate these things. If you have questions on what to ask or how to ask it, drop me an email, ask me afterwards. We'll talk about that. But generally, especially at some place like UPMC, EDMC, Shadyside, they're going to know what their costs are, and they can get back to you on that, and you can use those numbers in your calculations. Return. Now, returns may not be as quantifiable. A return is a positive or negative result of a campaign. Now again, we're all in marketing here, we're all grown-ups, everything's part of a campaign. You can have a campaign that's an ongoing campaign with no beginning date and no end date, or you can have a campaign that has a beginning date and an end date. So all of your calculations have to be associated and relevant to that. Okay? Again, because I work in IT, I'm very familiar. Everything we do is projectized, which means the laptop I use, it so happens that if I'm working on 3 projects, and each one, in my 40-hour week, I work, how's that work out? 20-some hours or 18 hours for each project, whatever. A third of 40 would be 13 hours each. So I have 3 projects. If I work on Project A, the cost of my laptop is 1/3. Project B, cost of my laptop is 1/3, and that's attributed to that project. And you do the same thing. If you're a blogger and you're blogging for 40 hours a week, and you have 3 different blogs that you're using, the cost of your laptop for that week is broken out 13 hours for blog A, 13 hours for blog B, 13 hours for blog C, or however many your actual hours are. So you start to attribute your hours like you attribute your marketing effectiveness. You attribute your costs. Okay. Now these are investments. These are the things that are spent towards your Facebook. Your internet connection, your ISP connection is not free. It costs you money. So you can calculate, and again, you have to talk to your accountant on how to do this. There are a couple of, boy, I don't want to get too much into accounting here, but there are fixed investments like your computer, your laptop, electricity, heating, your desk chair, and things like that, that you will always have. That's a fixed cost. No matter what you do, that's not going to change. If you're blogging on a site, the number of hours you spend is the cost that would go back to that blog. So where you're looking at is a variable cost. So if you go to your accountant and say, we're trying to figure out, and we'll use Sarah's example because she's a great example. Dana. Why do I call you Sarah? I am so sorry.
It's okay.
You're Dana Sarah for the rest of my life.
Okay, that's fine. I'm cool with that.
But for Dana, she's a webmaster at Shadyside Academy. At Shadyside Academy, she comes in and she only works on the campaigns for Shadyside Academy. And let's say she has an ongoing campaign and maybe 2 other campaigns that are very targeted at enrollment. Okay? So when she comes in the morning, she asks her accountant how much do you want me to attribute to these projects, to these campaigns, so that I can recognize the value of the campaigns? And he says, well, let's attribute your computer, let's attribute your salary, let's attribute the travel that you have to spend. So these are some of the things that we're looking at here. PC use, laptop use, bloggers' time, office space, how much does it cost to have an office there for you? Travel time, if you have to travel to sites, travel costs, parking. A lot of this is small business, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. A web analyst time. Let's say that that you're big enough that you're at EDMC, UPMC in your company, that not only do you have a blogger, but now you have a web analyst who's crunching numbers, who's trying to determine was it effective or not. So when you're looking at that, that time goes in. Again, an investment is any resource that has cost and is used for a campaign. Okay, making sense? If you buy ads, that's an obvious one. That's an easy one because it's very quantifiable. If you spend money on creative or graphics, that's very important to make sure that you include everything that comes in with that. The cost of administration. For example, if you have 3 bloggers, not only do you have 3 bloggers who are using computers, they're using office space, they're using office furniture, but what's it cost to administer their payroll? Those are costs too. Now, we're getting into very, very detailed questions. This is where your accountant comes in, this is where your boss comes in and says, this is too detailed for what we want to do. I don't need to know how much it costs to do your paycheck. Another boss may say, hey, I want to know what the entire cost is of this web department. I want to know what the annual cost is for my budget for next year. So we want to know these numbers. And again, I'm providing these as examples. It probably is too detailed for you, but for some of you it may not be. And being able to understand how that fits into the situation is very helpful. Reporting. Show of hands for people in the agencies, agency people. If you sit down with your customer and spend an hour explaining their report and their situation, that's an hour that costs the company. If you spend an hour compiling statistics and write up an analysis and send it to your customer, that's an hour spent. So there's an hour's worth of cost there. One of the big issues that we run into with small companies starting up, with new web departments, with new advertising and marketing departments is you don't charge enough because you're not charging for everything. And you get to the end of the year and say, I'm making all this money, but I don't have enough. You weren't charging enough on the front end. The last point I have here, and you need to keep in mind how this comes in on the accounting side. Rebates, discounts, and coupons. These actually cost the campaign. In the idea of profit. Have a feed of news. It is brutally tough to write about something on a weekly basis. I normally would recommend, I work with an IT training company that has a blog and so on, and I recommend that they have each one of their experts, they have 4 experts, and I say once a month for each expert. If you start to get more than that, you get very stale, you start to make up stuff, it's not a good blog. But again, for this example, and again for both situations, for the real estate and for the IT recruiting, in these situations, it's pretty easy for them to talk about stuff on a weekly basis. So anyway, the manager's making sure that they're doing everything they're supposed to do. That costs $1,820. Now, blogger planning, because you want to make sure that people aren't talking about their movies or their dog or their daughter wearing diapers. You have to have a monthly meeting to make sure everybody's in line, and that costs $420. So for this ongoing campaign, and we're looking at a monthly cost for the ongoing campaign, we're looking at $17,840. I'm sorry, that's for the year. That's for the year. So now, if we look at those are the costs for the year. Now, let's say that out of all of those efforts, and again, we're identifying, remember the last meeting we had attribution. We're identifying where the new leads or where the leads are coming through. So for real estate, the real estate agent is saying, where did you find out about this new listing? Oh, I saw it on the Facebook fan page. For the recruiter who's bringing in IT people, they say to the customer that hires, Giant Eagle, for example, where did you see this? Where did you see our information? How did you know to come to us? Oh, I saw it on the fan book page. So now we know that there are 5 placements, 5 houses were sold, or 5 IT people were placed for a staffing firm. Now, I went back and magically calculated the number of a new house sale is worth $10,000, or a new recruit placement has a profit of $10,000, okay? This isn't the total value of the sale. If you sell a house for $250,000, the profit isn't $250,000. In this case, it's $10,000, which is actually kind of close to the truth. If they place an IT person, they take the usual commission is half of the first year's salary. So it's $50,000, whatever, $75,000, depending on what they do. But again, we know because I sat down with my accountant and we calculated that that profit is actually worth $10,000. So because of this campaign, and again, we can attribute it back to this campaign, we know that the 5 places, the placements, the 5 houses, and the 5 IT recruits are worth $50,000. So we know that this campaign returned $50,000. Now, just to reiterate, the investment was $17,800. The campaign return was $50K. Now, for every dollar invested, $2.80 were made. And if we look at the net return, that's the total return minus the investment. That's $32,000. Now, 12 real estate people blogging are going to complain like crazy because it's a lot of work and it's pain in the neck and everything else. And your recruiters are going to say, I don't have time to do this, I have to do my job, I don't really want to go out and blog, it's not really worth it. When you can come back and say, it's going to be worth it and I want you to do it, here's how you prove it.